Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. We have a jam-packed episode for you guys tonight. The Detroit Pistons and Minnesota Timberwolves were two teams that attempted to trade for Kawhi Leonard. We'll be getting into that. More Jalen Duren updates. Man, it has been a doozy on the timeline for Pistons Twitter with this Jalen Duren restricted free agency saga. There is a team that is interested in trading for Marcus Sasser as he is on the trading block. We'll be getting into that. Any power forward on the team that is interested in Sasser that I think does make sense for the Pistons as a possible trading target. And we'll end the podcast with Tobias Harris, as it's been reported that he is likely to leave the Detroit Pistons in free agency. And some of the teams that are reported of going after Tobias Harris that I know for a fact two. I don't know the other three that are actually looking at him, but we should have a really good episode. Let's get into the Kawhi Leonard stuff first. So obviously, the Pistons and the Timberwolves were two teams that did try to land Kawhi Leonard per Shams Charania. I will put the tweet on the screen. It says the Timberwolves and the Pistons attempted to pursue Kawhi Leonard, but his camp shut down the idea per Shams Charania of ESPN. It says, quote, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Detroit Pistons were amongst multiple teams attempting to trade for Kawhi Leonard before they were rebuffed by Leonard's camp, end quote. So obviously, we know that there were some rumblings that Kawhi Leonard could be on the move, and the two teams that Kawhi said that he would sign an extension with were his former teams, the San Antonio Spurs and the Toronto Raptors, two teams that he's won championships with, Toronto more recently. So doesn't surprise me that he did get traded to Toronto. What is a little bit surprising is the Pistons at least attempted to put a package together with the Los Angeles Clippers, and I know a lot of us this time of year get frustrated with the way that news is cycled out in a sense where you'll be scrolling the timeline and it'll say, the Detroit Pistons are interested in Kawhi Leonard. You can have interest in a player and still not get that player. Like, I think when you see the word interested, like you're interested in players, but like if you don't have the assets or, Kawhi Leonard's camp or the team that you're dealing with doesn't want to trade him to you, they just don't want to trade him to you. Obviously, the Raptors forked over a ton for Kawhi Leonard, and we'll kind of put what they gave up. So they gave up Brandon Ingram, who is a starter level player for the Raptors this past season, good player when he's healthy. Grady Dick, who is a very good 3-point shooter, 2 first-round picks, 1 pick swap, and 2 second-round picks. So that's what it took to get Kawhi Leonard. Now, again, what did the Pistons initially offer? We don't know. They attempted. Kawhi's camp said, hey, like, we appreciate that you want to trade for Kawhi, but he has no interest in being in Detroit. He has no interest in being in Minnesota. He only wants to go to teams that he's familiar with and organizations that he's won championships with. So I can't knock the Pistons for not trying to go get a big fish. I know the ESPN guys after the draft saying that the Pistons could go big game hunting for LeBron James or Kawhi Leonard. Like we could even like talk about LeBron James today for a couple of minutes. It wasn't even in the podcast prep. We'll get into the Jalen Duren stuff in a minute, but like LeBron James decided to move on from LA, and he's not ruling out like any team, and maybe that is actually causing teams around the league to kind of have pause. I know LeBron James is in his 40s, one of the oldest players in the NBA, if not the oldest player in the NBA. I don't have it in front of me. I think Taj Gibson is still in the NBA and he's in his 40s too. But circling back to LeBron, like I heard that Cleveland is still in the mix for LeBron. I heard that Golden State is in mix for LeBron. There were, rumors about maybe New York, and he's even said like I'll take below market value to go play for a contending team. So I don't know where LeBron goes. If I did have to guess, I want to say Golden State. But like I could see, winning situations. Like I could see San Antonio, I could see Miami, I could see Boston, New York, Cleveland. But hey, maybe LeBron does come back to the Eastern Conference. But that could be holding some stuff up with other teams in the NBA and free agency. Like the last free agency signing that just popped on my phone was Dean Wade to the Philadelphia 76ers, which that was like a low-key target for me if the Pistons wanted to get a power forward. He's off the board, but talking about off the board, let's get into Jalen Duren. Yesterday, we saw some sign and trade reports come out from Chris Haynes from Amazon Prime and Sam Amick of The Athletic about, maybe the Sacramento Kings, Los Angeles Lakers. He met with the Lakers first, and then he met with the Kings. Now, again, I think the way to kind of read this restricted free agency situation with Jalen Duren is it's a lot of his agent in tactics to try to get the Detroit Pistons to play ball, right? I doubt Jalen Duren wants to go play for the Sacramento Kings. Even the Sacramento media, their radio guys, their podcasters, their beat reporters are like, there's a small chance it could happen. Like, I don't think he wants to go play for the Kings. The Kings, to me, are just one of the worst run organizations in basketball. I doubt Jalen Duren is going to leave a 60-win basketball team to go play for the Kings. Pistons even said, we have no interest in Domantas Sabonis for a Jalen Duren swap. So we'll get into the Jalen Duren stuff. We're going to be putting a couple of tweets on the screen. Let's start with this one first. That comes from Tim McMahon from ESPN. And this is a tweet from Oh No You Didn't, who posts a lot of ESPN shows, but this is a quote from Tim McMahon. It says, quote, the Pistons are not interested in helping facilitate a Jalen Duren exit by setting up a sign and trade with other teams, end quote. So Pistons themselves just do not want to get into a situation where Jalen Duren is in a sign and trade. That they just don't. Like, obviously, Trajan Langdon and this front office have said, Jalen Duren and players like Asar Thompson can get expensive. Again, we don't really know what the price that the Detroit Pistons have offered Jalen Duren. Last week's pod, we had reported that Sam Amick said that he was underwhelmed by the Pistons' initial offer. There's reports that he wants close up to $40 million annually. So there's just a lot of nuggets that have been coming out with this Jalen Duren restricted free agency stuff. There's another tweet we're going to be putting on the screen. This comes from Mark J. Spears from ESPN as well in Anscapes. He says the Detroit Pistons have offered what the franchise believes is the most lucrative contract possible for their all-star restricted free agent. Jalen Duren are not interested in any sign-and-trade deals and will match any potential offer sheet he signs, sources tell ESPN and Anscapes. So again, like, the Detroit Pistons want to keep Jalen Duren in a Detroit Pistons uniform, and obviously they have offered him a contract. They're just waiting to see how this does play out with him in restricted free agency. And right before we were getting ready to record a podcast, there were rumblings that Jalen Duren and his representation were interested in the Boston Celtics. And we talked about the Boston Celtics. And I think some Pistons fans are immediately going to go to, can we trade Jalen Duren for Jaylen Brown? I'm never going to tell you guys you can't trade for a player. We can have a conversation of how you get to Jaylen Brown's salary, how you get to Jalen Duren's salary, and what assets, draft picks, players that would have to go out. Just off the top of my head, it would not be a Jalen Duren for Jaylen Brown swap. I think if you're the Pistons, you probably have to include Duncan Robinson. You would probably have to include Ron Holland. I don't know if they would want LeVert, but I think for salary purposes, you might have to kind of involve him. LeVert, to me, is just a negative asset at this point, but you get what I'm saying. Even though some people around the league believe that Jaylen Brown's, value isn't what a lot of executives in Boston want it to be. It could be initially lower. Now, Jaylen Brown, to me, would be a great fit in Detroit. Like if you can keep Cade Cunningham, you can keep Asar Thompson on your team, and you have a core three of those. Like I think it's great, but like who's the center, right? Who's your power forward? What does your bench look like? Like those are the questions I would have. Those are the questions you guys probably have as well. And I know some people are a little bit more analytical, even though I'm not going to go with like the stats with Jaylen Brown, more of like the contract with Jaylen Brown that comes with trading him. He signed a massive deal. He's still under contract for a few more seasons, but that contract does get more expensive year after year. And you already have Cade on that max. You would have Jaylen Brown on that max, and you kind of just supplement, everyone around, those three of possible Cade, Jaylen Brown, and Asar Thompson. So never say never. I mean, we've seen Luka Doncic get traded, but Dallas probably doesn't like even want to like talk about that. Well, we're going to be talking about the Mavericks in a minute, but again, I think the sign and trade situation with Jalen Duren right now is just more of his agent trying to get the Detroit Pistons to play ball for what they want. And it's also worth noting, if you look up Jalen Duren's agent that works at Wasserman, he has had 5 NBA clients, which is not a lot for an NBA agent. But, this could be something with him where, he's kind of newer on the agent scene. But the only other active NBA player that he's representing right now is Tari Eason from the Houston Rockets. I mean, his other 3 clients are former Pistons, Markieff Morris and Marcus Morris, and Alfred Payton. That's it. He's had 5 NBA clients. I don't think it's a knock on him as an agent, but I think right now the hardball of saying like, we'll take sign and trade opportunities. We want to go from Sacramento to Los Angeles to Boston. Again, I think it's just a tactic to try to get the Pistons to get that maximum salary that Jalen Duren wants and what his agent wants. But again, like a lot of these reports, Pistons are like, you can do whatever you want. Like you can go talk to these teams if you want. Like we have all the leverage. Like we'll match any offer. We'll match the 4 years 177 gladly. Like we'll give you 178. It's like a troll probably, right? Like I don't know if the Pistons are that petty, but I know some of you guys would be that petty. Like saying I'll give you a 178.0 just to be petty. But hey, man, this Duren stuff isn't going away. I think it's going to be a topic all season long. I think the Pistons want to stay firm on whatever dollar figure that they did offer him. Me personally, I hope it's like around the $35 million range. Like I'm okay with that. If it gets close to 40, then I'm kind of like, I don't know, but we'll see what happens, man. We'll see. I feel like every other day we're talking about him, and I'm sure you guys are probably sick of hearing it. I think we're all waiting for the Shams Charania notification that Jalen Duren has signed a contract extension with the Detroit Pistons, right? Let's get into Marcus Sasser. Now, he was put on the trade block a couple of days ago, and the Dallas Mavericks are one of the teams that are possibly linked to Marcus Sasser per Mark Stein. So we'll put the tweet on the screen. So it says, Mavericks have emerged as a leading suitor to acquire Detroit's Marcus Sasser via trade, league sources tell the Stein line. Now, as you guys know, Marcus Sasser has not gotten consistent opportunities since he was drafted in 2022 as a trade up during Asar's draft, right, in 2022. I think Sasser is one of the players on this team that I could totally see just popping wherever he goes if he gets the playing time. I could see like a Peyton Pritchard type of role for Marcus Sasser. Now, Dallas is an interesting team because they have players, because I know some of you are probably going to say, is Kyrie Irving available? What does it take to get Kyrie? The Mavericks have said, hey, like we don't want to move Kyrie. We want him to be a mentor for Cooper Flagg. So you're looking at other players on this roster, and I kind of did a tweet earlier of the framework of what it would take to get PJ Washington. Now, I think Mavericks fans took this the wrong way of like what the trade offer would be. I was just saying it's strictly salaries. This could get you PJ Washington. I think it would actually take a little bit more to get him, but just kind of the contract framework for a PJ Washington would take a Marcus Sasser and a Karis LeVert to get him. Now, I'm not saying this gets you PJ Washington, it gets you to his salary. I think Dallas would want more than Marcus Sasser and Karis LeVert, even though Dusty May is down in Dallas now. He's bringing in Michigan guys. He drafted Mraz Johnson. I just saw that they're interested in bringing a former Michigan guard. Karis LeVert is a former University Michigan guard. Does that interest Dallas? They do have quite a bit of guards down there, but Sasser to me is interesting for them. I could totally see him kind of playing a six-man role off the bench in Dallas. But again, I don't know if the Pistons are going to get anything in return for him. I could totally see just a similar package that we got for Isaiah Stewart, where it's just like second-round picks. Like I could totally see that. We barely played Marcus Sasser here in Detroit. It just kind of gets to a point where, like, when you drafted Ibuka Corey, you're bringing Dana Shakins back. It was going to be hard for Marcus Sasser to like really get a consistent role off the bench for JB Bickerstaff. And now JB's 2 years here. He's barely played Sasser. So I think the writing was kind of on the wall for him that our guard depth was just too deep for him to even crack the rotation. But wouldn't surprise me if you did see him pop off, whether it's in Dallas or what other teams that are out there that may be interested in him. But it would be cool to see him kind of go home. Obviously, he played at the University of Houston. Dallas is like 3 hours, 4 hours away from Houston. But I mean, even his dad had posted this morning, and he actually tagged me in an old interview clip that I had posted of Marcus Sasser. And even his dad is just like kind of annoyed with like the role that Marcus Sasser has been given since been drafted with the Detroit Pistons over these past 4 years and not getting a consistent opportunity. So this would be a fresh start for him to get an opportunity in Dallas. And who knows? Low key, like, if I'm Trajan, I'm like, can we just like do like a Max Christie for like Marcus Sasser swap, please? But I feel like that is just like so delusional by me. Max Christie to me, I feel is just gonna pop. Every year in the league, he has just completely upped his game and scoring. He's developed quite nicely, but that's maybe a pipe dream by me. Could totally see like 3 seconds for Marcus Sasser, just Shams Karania tweet, and we're all just like, really? If we couldn't get anything from Marcus Sasser, but hey, still very early on in the offseason. We're only day one into free agency, but we're going to end the podcast with Tobias Harris. Now, Tobias Harris, obviously, you guys know, signed a 2-year deal with the Detroit Pistons, and he's a free agent this year. And we got this tweet last night immediately after we were done talking to you guys on the podcast. I wasn't able to discuss it with you, but Chris Haynes says Tobias Harris is unlikely to return to Detroit in free agency. And then we also got another tweet from Sam Amick saying one of the Pistons on the Pistons being on standby while 2 of their most important players, Jalen Duren and Tobias Harris, test the market at the Athletic. Sources say Harris is talking to 5 teams. Duren is scheduled to meet with the Lakers at 4 and the Kings at 5. I have heard personally, just talking to people, that the Lakers have real interest in Tobias Harris. The Lakers have interest in going after Sandro. They have interest in going after a lot of different players. Looks like they're getting rid of Rui Hachimura, and Sandro's going to kind of fall into that power forward role. But they also have interest in Tobias Harris. And they're going to have a lot more, cap room to work with LeBron James testing the open market, right? The Lakers are one team. Another team I've heard is the Charlotte Hornets quite a bit. Charlotte just traded LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges. They could have up to $40 million depending on what types of moves they do make. And it sounds like Tobias is talking to teams that are winners. I don't know if I could see him going to Brooklyn, even though they do have the cap space. I don't know if I could see him going to Chicago. Chicago looks like they still want to be bad. They still kind of want to, be a rebuilding team. That's fine. They're going through a rebuild. I think they should anyways. But losing Tobias, I think, is actually a pretty big loss for the Detroit Pistons just because the lack of power forward depth on this team is really glaring. I think a lot of us were hoping that Bobby Klitman could have turned into something, but he just never got the opportunity. And when he did get the opportunity, it was like, oh, this guy is really, really raw still. He's a project, and he might be ready in another 2 years, not this year. And then the Pistons eventually, waive him and cut him, and you sign Tolu Smith at the end of the year. So the one power forward prospect you were hoping to turn into something didn't. And, the power forward market is getting a little bit bleaker and bleaker by the second. One kind of maybe nugget I could leave you guys with is the Isaiah Stewart trade has not been made official yet by the Grizzlies. I was looking at this before I hopped on tonight. Now, obviously, different trades have different maneuvers, and teams are able to make it the trade's official, right? They just traded John Morant, and if you go on the Grizzlies social media, they have welcomed Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. They have not made a social media post about Isaiah Stewart, and he was traded last week. I'm under the assumption that the Grizzlies did use some type of trade exception or mid-level exception to absorb Isaiah Stewart's contract, and the deal will probably become official like around July 6th. But the trade could actually still be ongoing. Another team could possibly get in the trade. The Pistons could possibly get something back, hopefully a power forward, hopefully. I don't even know who our starting power forward is going to be. I don't. Right now, I mean, we just started free agency. Maybe it's Ron Holland. Maybe it's Ron Holland, but I don't really think the Pistons want Ron Holland to be the starting power forward. Not to say that Ron couldn't play starting power forward, but I think they want someone that can stretch the floor a little bit, is able to grab rebounds, and is more of a veteran. Maybe it's Rui, maybe it's John Collins, maybe it's someone in the trade market. Maybe you call Denver, see what they want for a Cam Johnson. Do they move off of Aaron Gordon? Like the power forward market right now is really bleak. Obviously, we have talked about like Lauri Markkanen on this podcast for the past couple of years, but I think Lauri Markkanen is just so expensive. It gets to a point where like I don't even think the Pistons would want that, because like conversations would start at Asar Thompson. We mentioned BJ Washington. He could be cost effective, but again, like there's not a lot of power forwards out there that like I think really get you positive at the position. I know someone had mentioned like Peyton Watson from Denver. I'm under the assumption Denver gets a deal done and they do move salary so they can retain him personally. But Peyton Watson would be a really fun, entertaining name. There's just not a lot of power forwards out there that stretch the floor and make a whole lot of sense for Detroit. That's why I thought Sandro would make sense, but it looks like the Lakers are closing in on a deal, even though the Jake Fisher did report that the Pistons did have interest in him as well. But looks like the Lakers could get him. But day one of free agency, as it's 11 o'clock right now, is a dud for the Detroit Pistons. I also think the reason why it's a dud so far is they're trying to figure out a deal with Jalen Duren, and then they'll probably try to get other players to fill out the roster. But hopefully this Jalen Duren contract does not linger for too much longer, because the Pistons could miss out on some possible free agents that they could bring in to fill out the roster, or maybe possible trades to upgrade the roster. But I told you guys, I didn't really anticipate them to be that active in the free agency market. I felt like they were going to be more active in the trade market. And so far, they've been way more active in the trade market, like trading for Abuka Corey in the draft, trading Isaiah Stewart for 3 seconds, trading for Isaiah Joe. I could see another trade coming before I see them like spending big money in free agency. But I could be wrong. You never know. But hope you guys did enjoy tonight's podcast. Before we do leave you, we have to hear from our sponsors over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, there are Central Division odds. And with the Pistons being in the Central Division, they are the odds-on favorite to win the Central this year at a minus 175. Cleveland is at a plus 230. Indiana is at a plus 480. Milwaukee and Chicago, obviously rebuilding teams, plus 20,000 for Milwaukee, plus 25,000 for the Chicago Bulls. But man, Pistons being odds-on favorite to win the Central. Hey, man, sign me up for it. Who knows what's going to happen in Cleveland? They might try to make a run at LeBron. Like, I don't even know how that, like, financially works because they're a second apron team. Like, does Donovan Mitchell get traded? Are they going to move Max Strus? Are they going to move some, mid-level to higher salaries to try to get, like, a LeBron James Harden duo? I don't know what Cleveland's doing. Indiana's a sneaky team with Tyrese Halliburton coming back, says he's feeling healthy. They got Zubac. I think they're going to be a really fun, entertaining team in the East this year. I wouldn't sleep on them. And Milwaukee, I think, will be somewhat competitive, but I could still see them like finishing like 12th to 13th, even though they got Tyler Hero and players like that on their roster. Still have Miles Turner, but it'll be interesting, man. This offseason so far is just getting started. I know a lot of Pistons fans are extremely frustrated with how it has gone so far, but it's just day one of free agency. Hopefully we do get a Duren update, him getting extended by the Detroit Pistons, and we can stop talking about him every podcast. But hope you guys do have a great rest of your night. Stay cool, you guys. It's 87 degrees at 11 o'clock at night still. And it's going to be 97 or 98 tomorrow and the next day. Summer's officially here, I guess. But we will talk to you guys tomorrow on the podcast. Hopefully we have some more positive news with the Jalen Duren contract situation and maybe some new Detroit Pistons on the roster, some trades, some free agency updates. But talk to you guys soon. Have a good night.